Okay, so appointments set per lead is the first KPI fully owned by sales. And if you can improve this just by 5 points, your entire revenue forecast is going to tighten, without hiring, spending more on ads, changing text. And so this is like the KPI to where you can really create leverage. And so let's get started. I'm going to show you how to create this. This is sort of the top of the funnel chart here. And then from there, I want to break it down by sales rep. And so the key here is how do you explain? So what is a 64% rate versus a 54% rate? What does that actually mean other than, okay, per 100 leads, 10 aren't showing up to an appointment, 10 appointments aren't set. And so I'm going to break all this down. Okay, so we have a data set here, which is, let me clear these filters. So what this is showing is pretty straightforward, right? When did the lead come in? What month? What source? Sales rep, and then contacted, minutes to contact, were they contacted? Was an appointment set, right? And so let's get started with this. What we need to do first is we need to get the number of leads here. So leads contacted, appointments set. And so I'm trying to copy this here. And then, so from there, we want leads and then rate. So leads and then rate. The rate being the percentage breakdown. Okay, so to get the number of leads, it's pretty straightforward. So all you have to do is just count in the table. You can count any of these columns as long as there's data in the full, everywhere. Like here, there's blanks. So we don't want that. But you can just count essentially the number of rows because every row is a lead, right? So count that equals count A, and then whichever part of the table you want to highlight. We can just do lead source. So leads contacted is going to be here, right? We have a contacted flag, which is just, were they contacted binary, yes or no? And because one is yes, we can take the sum of this, right? Because not every lead was contacted. You can see some here, they weren't contacted. So from here, it's super straightforward. SUMIFS. Actually, you don't even need a SUMIFS, just sum this column here, contacted flag, because again, one is yes. So 1776, and then appointment set. And we have another column for that, which is appointment set flag, 1 versus 0. 0 is no, 1 is yes. So we just need the sum of that. And when you're doing this, make sure you're highlighting the table. So to put everything into a table, just press Control T to put things in a table. I can't do it here because it's already in a table, but let's just say, you had a data set like this and you want to put it in the table, just press Control T and then this little dialog box will come up and then you have it in a table. Okay, so from here, we just want to calculate the percentages, which is pretty straightforward. So the rate equals this divided by this because it's just 1, right? It's just 100%. But then we want to divide equals this divided by the number of leads, and then the appointment set divided by the number of leads, and we have that. So press Control-Shift-5 to get the percentages. And so we have that here. So to create this funnel chart is all you have to do is just highlight the type or highlight leads, leads contacted appointment set, and then highlight the percentages by holding down the Control key, go to Insert, Recommended Charts, and you can see it right here. We'll make it black. Okay, we'll delete this series here. We don't need to show that. And then I'll just make the text here white, just to make it a little bit easier to see, and we can make it bold. And so you have, leads to appointments set. Okay, great. So now we have this. You can call it, lead to appointment conversion funnel. That's fine. But the next thing we want to do is we want to get a unique list of the sales rep. And then instead of, doing an overall summary, we want to break it down by the sales rep. So how many leads were they given? How many did they contact? And then how many appointments were set? What is the rate? And then what is the benchmark? So we can create this chart here. Okay, so to get a unique list of the sales rep, because our data's in a table, we don't even need to actually go to the data. If you're familiar with your data, then you don't even need to look at the data anymore because you can type everything in here. So it's like unique table sales rep, right? So we have a unique list just like that. It's the same thing as going, unique data, sales rep here. But if you don't want to go back and forth, you can just, and your columns here, then you can just type that in. You don't have to go back and forth. But I want to show you a new little function. I say new, it's Microsoft launched it a little while ago, but you might not be familiar with it, the sort function. And so we want to sort alphabetically here. So now I'm going to highlight this Control Shift by pressing the Control Shift and down arrow, Control C, Control Shift V, because I don't want the formula there. And you can see now there's no formula. And then the next things we want to calculate are all of these things here. So I'm just going to copy and paste. I mean, of course you can type that in if you want. But so now how do we calculate the number of leads that Alex Turner received in this data set? So what we want to do is we just want to count the number of times his name is there, right? Because by counting that, each row is a lead. So if his name is there, then it means that it's a lead associated to that person. So we know it's the sales rep column, comma, here, right? And then we can just copy and paste that down. So now what we want to do is we want to sum the leads contacted column, right? Because that's going to tell us how many leads were contacted. Because if we sum it, again, the 1 is a lead contacted and a 0 means the lead was not contacted. So we want the SUMIFS function. We're learning a lot of functions here. At the top, we learn sum, then we learn the sort and the unique, and now we're learning the SUMIFS. So SUMIFS, so what is the sum range? The sum range is going to be in the table, and we can just filter through, right? So the sum range of leads contacted is going to be the contacted flag. Once you're there, you can press tab, and then it'll go over. So we want to sum the contacted flag where the sales rep, comma, is Alex, right? And I'll do the formula again because you could just copy and paste this down, but I'm going to do it this time by going into the data. So SUMIFS, so we want the sum range of the contacted flag. Make sure you're highlighting the table. You see how the column highlights the letter F? We don't want to click here. We don't want to click the column. We don't want it to be this. We want it to be the table. So contacted flag, comma, and then sales rep, comma, and then, it's just going to be here. B17. Is that right? Yeah, I guess so. I guess they're the same number for both. Okay, and then the next thing we want to do is we want to calculate the appointment set. So you can actually just reuse this formula, but instead of contacted flag, we want the appointment set column, right? So SUMIFS, table, appointment set flag, right? So that's going to give us the sum of that, where table, sales rep, make sure you close your brackets, comma, is Alex Turner. And so now we can copy and paste that down. Another thing you could do, I'll show you 2 other ways. You can double click here, or if you don't want to use the mouse, you can just go to the cell next to it, go over, Control Shift down, Control D, and D is in dog, and that'll autofill down. So the rate of the appointment set versus the number of leads is going to be the appointment set divided by the number of leads. And now you have a percentage. Press Control Shift and the number 5, and you will get the percentage. It'll format it as a percent. And then let's just say we have a benchmark of 65% for now, and then equals the one above it. That way, and the reason we do equals the one above it is that way we can make this dynamic. And I'll show you the benefit of that. So now what we want is we want the percentages of, the column is going to be the percent of the show rate. So you can just highlight sales rep, highlight, press Control, and then highlight these two. And then you can go to Insert, Recommended Charts. And you're not going to see the one you want, because what we want is we want a combo chart. And by combo chart, it means one of the variables can be one type of chart and the other variable can be another type of chart. And what I mean by that is for the rate, we want a column, but for the benchmark, we want a line. So there are two different types. So combo, just like this, right? And then you can press OK, maybe make it black. And you have that here. And one thing I'll do is I'm going to change this axis just a little bit, just so we can see more variation. I'll change, instead of 0 to 70, I'll do 40 to 70. So double click on the x-axis or the y-axis, click the three little columns, axis options, and we'll do 0.4. And now you can see a little bit of variation. And while I'm here, I'm going to click on this orange line, and then I'm going to click the little paint bucket, go to maybe make it a little bit thinner, say 1.5, and we can make it a dash, just to have a light benchmark there. And then if you click on the columns, you'll see a little crosshair pull up here. Sometimes it's on the left side, sometimes it's on the right side. You see how I just switched over to the right? And then click on data labels, and then you can see it shows both. Yeah, because I didn't have the column, so I'm going to undo that, but click the column specifically and then data labels. And now you can see you have the labels here. And then you have a benchmark, and we will call this, say, appointments set per sales rep. And you can change the names, to whatever you want. And then make it a little bit smaller. And before, the reason why I wanted to make this dynamic is because now you can see sort of how that line changes, right? And so the thing is that we fixed the bottom axis. So if you were to change this to 30, like, you can't see it because we changed the 40%. We forced the 40% to not be dynamic. But if you went to 80, you'll see the top sort of limit is more dynamic. But anyways, so that's how you create that. But the final thing I want to show, it's already been almost 13 minutes, but the final thing I want to show is what does this even mean, right? So what is the difference between 64 and 57? Or let's use 57.6. So let's just copy Alex Turner, hold down Control, and then click all of these. Control C, and then I'll press Control Shift V to get the percentages, or just to paste it here. So now what we want to do is, let's say we have a 80% show rate. So out of 100 leads, so let's do equals this times 100 leads. Or let's do 200 because there's 200 in the data set, right? Or let's do 230 because that's close to what they have. He has 229. So equals this times 230, right? So 148 versus 132, which is the number that showed up, right? No, actually, no, sorry. Let's do times 100 because then we can put it on the same sort of, what is your cost per 100 leads? So if you give Alex 100 leads and you give Ryan 100 leads, 64 people set an appointment, 57 people set an appointment. But let's say your show rate is 80%, right? So what that means is out of 100 leads, you're getting 5.5 more people on a demo that actually show up. And let's say your close rate is 50%, right? So that means, right, per whatever time frame is, per 100 leads. And then so now what is the average deal size? And so the way we can do that is we use the average of S function. So the average deal size is going to be booked revenue, right? Booked revenue here. But we don't want to do just the average of booked revenue. What we want to do is we want to do the average of booked revenue if it's greater than 0, right? Because the zeros here are for non-closed deals, but we have closed deals here. So we want to see the average if it's greater than that. So what this is saying is per 100 lead that you give Alex versus Ryan, Alex is closing 2.7 more, and the average deal size is 9,700. So equals this times this. And this right here is the number that you care about. So what we just showed is that if you give the 230 leads that you gave Ryan, if you give them to Alex, he's going to close, equals 229, divided by 100 equals this times this, right? He's going to close $60,000 more. If you were to transfer these leads to Alex, which, I mean, to be fair, maybe he can't handle them, but if you gave Alex Ryan's leads, Alex would make you $60,000 more from the same leads. And that's sort of what the data, that's how to get the insight from the data. Because again, these charts are valuable. I'm not saying they're not, but what I'm saying is you need to take it a step further and actually understand what that means. And that's what it means. This right here is what you want to know. But anyways, that's all I got for this one. If you have any questions, shoot me an email. questions@databoards.io. If you want this file, there's the link to download. If you need some help, structuring your data in a proper format, there's a link to hop on my calendar, or you can just shoot me an email. But anyways, that's all I got for this one, and I'll see you in future videos.